Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we are going to get into the presidential debates, but I have never seen a debate formatted the way that they had formatted the first presidential debate between the four current leading candidates here in South Korea, and I actually think it is quite genius. I've never seen it before in all of my, life as kind of doing debates in politics. I've never seen it before in a televised debate on any level, from local to the presidential level over in the United States. And I don't even think I saw it ever in Korea. So perhaps this is truly a K debate format that I'm just actually in love with. So why do I not like the traditional debate? Why do you probably not like the traditional debate? It's so much drama around the whole structure. Which network is going to air it? Which of their reporting talent is going to be the moderator? How are they going to select the questions? How are they going to alternate between time? But what ends up happening is that when the candidate just gets going into something good, time, cut, we got to go to the next person. And there's some sort of like monotony with like everybody has to answer the same question. And then the rebuttals get really messy because usually they only try to give you like 30 seconds to rebut. All right, what is different about this? It was much more of a freestyling type of debate that actually was controlled. Somebody found the best of both worlds, and I would say actually, I do believe I don't like it when you're always like attaching K like for Korea on something, like K food, K beauty, yes, K drama, that's cool, that's good. K beauty, yeah, that's good. But these days they're just trying to attach it to anything to try to like create a brand and then just be like, oh my God, like we're so great. But honestly, I think this deserves a K attachment because I do think that this is one of the rare cases in Korea where the organizers, their main priority was to cover their own butt and, work within this whole dysfunctional system. And actually innovation came out of that by trying to avoid getting in trouble yourself and making those types of choices. Usually that does not end up in a better product, but in this case, I think it did. Why? Well, first of all, even though it was filmed at KBS, the three major networks, KBS, SBC, and MBC, they all shared the rights to air it. So they all aired it on their own live terrestrial channels, and this debate got like 39% viewership, so that is super high for a presidential debate. And a lot of voters have said like the TV debate is extremely important to them. I guess that's really how they can kind of compare the product right then and there. And in this format that I'm about to tell you, I think is the absolute most effective way to compare the product. Now, they did make 4 categories. They were going to be talking about real estate, diplomacy, security, freedom, and job growth. They made that as the 4 sections. And then they did let the candidate kind of give like a 30-second spiel, like, one by one, like, who they are. And then to introduce the section, they did let them do like, I think 30 seconds again to be like, okay, what would be the main thing you would do? In this case, like the first one was real estate, for real estate policy once you get into office. But then they load up the timers for 5 minutes behind each candidate so you can see how much time they have. After that, anytime they open their mouth, the countdown goes down. So everybody knows that once my mouth is open, I only have 5 minutes total, and it's fair for everyone, but we can budget out how we can use that individually. where do the questions come from? Now, this is the absolute genius part that I'm just so amazed by this debate. It comes from the candidates themselves to each other. Now, why is this kind of like born out of this dysfunction? Because, I bet these networks, after the whole scandal popped up about like how Yoon Suk-yeol's wife had a reporter in his pocket and was attacking the candidates, nobody, I think, wanted to have any drama from any of the campaigns about you're being unfair to us. And arguing about which questions get on the list. In this way, the only thing that the moderator is controlling is making sure that everybody is civil and not going to be punching each other, and they're keeping time. And then they just give the main categories, and then they let the candidate, either they're just going to say what they want to say with their 5 minutes. Each time they speak, they have to keep it limited to 60 seconds and under, though. But where the magic happened was they kind of said a little bit of their position, but it's kind of like a wind up to an attacking question to one of their opponents. And then once they shut their mouth, then the opponent has to answer that question, and then the timer goes down on that person. And then that person can ask a question back to the person who asked him, or they can just ask a different question to another candidate. So apparently they've all prepared somewhat about and this is why it's more interesting. They've prepared their own attacks on other candidates through questions. So you don't get any of this kind of strain, because I did TV news, from the reporter perspective, you're trying to make it fun and engaging and really probing, but then at the same time, you got to take a step back to be kind of sanitized and fair. It's hard. It's a hard thing. It's not worth it. You let the candidates go after each other, and then it becomes a little bit less of a debate and more of a discussion, as if you've thrown these 4 people, these very high profile people running for president in the same room, and then you're just kind of watching, as if there's a two-way mirror and they're a focus group, and you're just watching them, and they're having the discussion with each other. Now, where the moderator does butt in is just kind of candidate 4 has a lot of time left, so we're just going to jump over to her, let her, get her chance in. And so in that way, you don't have somebody just use up all their time, and then at the end, there's just one person who's been ignored, sort of like the way Andrew Yang was ignored, remember? And has no, has all the time left, and then, they just have to either give a speech, or then they just keep going and attacking other people. Now, the other cool thing they said was let's say you want to ask a question to one of your opponents and they have 10 seconds left, but you have maybe 2.5 minutes left. You can give them some of your time and say look, I'm going to give you my 30 seconds. You answered it, so it's the opposite of Reclaiming My Time by Maxine Waters. It's kind of I'm giving you some time so you can answer, buddy. I was just who came up with this genius solution? It seems so well gamified and thought out. And so I can see how this definitely engaged the viewer interest, because the ideas and the debate were enough, because it was I think somewhat last minute, and also it's a little bit harder to predict who's going to be speaking and what. So what I'm trying to say is that there was no fancy camera angles. There were none of these shoom, boom boom sound effects and visual kind of effects to kind of go in between when the candidates were transitioning between speaking, because there was no way to really do that, and it was live. On the surface, it was kind of simple and also kind of quiet. So it was truly about what we want to know, because they all have their ways of understanding what the voters are thinking right now. And so they were able to ask the questions and be real shady with each other in the way that they ask the questions and the response they ask the questions, and they try to trap people into kind of like embarrassing situations, which I think in our YouTube age, we want to see them real. We don't want to see them like, allegedly, like when they said like George Bush had like kind of like an earpiece and was being fed the answers because, that one didn't know anything. And so when Yoon Suk-yeol, he didn't know stuff. He's just like, well, wait, what does that mean? Explain that to me. We want to know if you know it or not. And I thought that was so cool to see. So anyway, this video, I just wanted to share how impressed I was with the way that this K-debate format came about, and let me know if like, is this a common thing? Maybe it's a common thing and I've just been kind of like not noticing, but I was so amazed with how it actually worked. Give everybody the 5 minutes. It's kind of like I'm going to give you the weekly allowance, okay? So I'm not going to like try to like, measure like how much you're, spending on lunch and then how much you're going to spend on your like popsicle. And so by giving them that time in that block so that they can mentally just adjust and work it out themselves, I think just worked really well, got a lot of information out in a short period of time, and made it engaging to watch without it being like overly produced so that they had to like sensationalize it. It was literally like kind of a quiet but serious and real like kind of shady diggy kind of conversation between these four. Anyhow, so leave your comments below if you've ever seen this debate format, and in the next video we're going to go over their real estate policy. All right guys, talk to you later. Bye-bye.